Christy, which is was not to be confused with the Irish film of the same name, which came out earlier this year, which is one of my favourite films of the year. You remember I reviewed that? I saw it at Berlin, and then anyway, so that's absolutely brilliant. So this is a sporting biopic of women's boxing pioneer Christy Martin, played by Sydney Sweeney, who is also a producer. And this is very much a star vehicle for Sydney Sweeney. The film's directed and co-written by Australian filmmaker David Michôd, who's previously probably best known for writing and directing Animal Kingdom. The screenplay is co-written by Mira Fulks. So we meet Christy as a punchy young woman, then called Christy Salters, in late 80s West Virginia, who was done a fight, but has no sort of that's not where she sees her career going. But she is having an affair with a friend, and her parents are absolutely appalled that her and her girlfriend. There are stories about you and that girl. There's stories about them, and so they're thinking about sending her to a priest, presumably to do the pray away the gay thing that they used to do with conversion therapy, all that nonsense. Instead, she finds herself back in the boxing ring because she's sort of spied as a talent. And trainer and manager James Martin, who is played with a sort of a paunch and a comb over by Ben Foster, who does a really, really good job with the role, this kind of creepy, controlling figure, decides that she can become a star. He also decides that she is his property, and essentially says to her, look, if you want to be a success, firstly, you've got to get rid of any rumours of queerness. Secondly, you have to cut all ties with your previous life. You become my wife, you become my property, and I will make you a star. Here's a clip.
I'm serious when I say I can make you the greatest female fighter in the world.
Compared to who? Nobody's doing it. Nobody's getting paid to do it.
That's gonna change. And when the time is right, I'll make the call to Don King. Don just moved back to Miami, and when you're ready, I'll make the call. But you gotta do the work. You gotta want it. Now, if you want to stay here in West Virginia, I can't stop you. But I don't think you do. I can see it in your eyes.
So she agrees, and he then sets about molding, shaping, and more importantly, increasingly controlling her life as his protege and then wife. And somehow Don King's attention is caught, and he's got no time for James at all, but he thinks he can really get behind Christy and make her saleable. She becomes famous as an aggressive fighter, and out of the ring, she calls her opponents dykes because her husband told her to kind of distance herself from any sense of queerness at all. She's on television saying she's just a normal wife who cooks dinner but just happens to knock people out for a living. And all the time, the husband is becoming more and more controlling, and controlling what she does, what she eats, where she goes, who she sees, who she speaks to, and making quite clear to her, if you ever leave me, I will kill you. Now, I didn't know anything about the story, and there will be people listening to this who did, and so therefore, very much like with Foxcatcher, when I was watching Foxcatcher, I had no idea where it was going, but it is clearly a story about an abusive relationship. You were talking about this before in terms of Pillion, and it's very much that. It's not really to do with the way in which Christy Martin affects the sport. It's to do with the domestic circumstance. And it's kind of gripping because there's something really horrifying about seeing somebody being controlled and being essentially trapped. And it's got very solid performances, not least by Merritt Weaver, who plays Christy's mum, the mum who just basically thinks that she should just be a good wife and she should just stop having any contact with her old friends. Also, Katie O'Brien, who is in it, is underused. Katie O'Brien was absolutely brilliant in Love Lies Bleeding, and she's very good in this, although she's not in it enough for my liking, but she's very good in this as Christy's greatest opponent and then later advocate. So the main story around this, which you may know, is that the film basically opened in America to decent reviews, but horrible box office. Box Office Mojo said it was one of the top 12 worst openings for a new release that opened on over 2,000 screens. It opened at number 11 So it didn't even make the top 10, and then was in the 20s in its second week. And there was all this stuff about why did it fail. And I'm a fan of Sydney Sweeney as an actor. I thought she was great in White Lotus. She was brilliant in reality. But do you remember the whole news cycle that she became the center of this story? That basically the MAGA crowd adopted her because she was a registered Republican, and then the MAGA crowd adopted her as a sort of poster girl for the anti-woke thing because she was in an advert for Eagle Jeans, in which the tag was genes are passed down from parents to offspring, determining traits. I had my genes are blue. And so there was a whole thing about, oh yeah, fine. Then one side of that debate said, well, this is terrible. This is like talking about eugenics. It became a big thing. But it became really big when Mango Mussolini truthed, as I think the word is, Sydney Sweeney, a registered Republican, has the hottest ad out there. Go get 'em, Sweeney. So it's an unfortunate thing to happen to anybody. But anyway, of course, the weird thing is the MAGA crowd don't take very kindly to a story that says, this woman who was gay and then was told not to be gay anymore and was told to just shut up and, knuckle down with the abusive husband. Weirdly enough, they didn't have much interest in that. So maybe that's what happened. Maybe it was that the base that she was then appealing to said, no, I'm sorry, we don't want you to make that movie. The other thing is the movie itself isn't great. I mean, it's a perfectly decent, solidly put together piece with a sort of standout performance by Sydney Sweeney. I mean, obviously, it's not the first. It's not the first female boxing movie. You think about things like Girl Fight from way back. Actually, there's two films called Girl Fight, $1 Million Baby, Fire and Sound. There's been quite a lot. And what this does is it doesn't really radically rewrite the template in any way. It is very much a performance vehicle for Sydney Sweeney. But from my point of view, because I didn't know the story, but the first minute when you meet the comb-overed, paunchy person who is going to become the abusive, from the minute you set eyes on him, he's bad news. You want to stay away from him. And then I think that the film does quite a good job of showing you how that pans out. So I think as a film about an abusive relationship, that's probably its strongest suit. It's overlong, and it is a bit of a slog, particularly in its sort of final third. But Sydney Sweeney is very good in it, and I think one shouldn't take the fact that it tanked in America very seriously because it's America, right? The film isn't great, but the story is really kind of engrossing, and I think her performance is good.
Strange thing about the "My Jeans Are Blue" thing, which is interesting. I mean, I read all the hoo-ha and I thought, really? Because blue is, of course, Democrat and red is Republican. So that's not a political line. I just wonder if people were making far more of a thing than actually it deserves. Really.
The fuss that people were making was because it was the thing about genes determining traits and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was one of those things that just got out of hand.
Yeah,
clearly.
Okay.
But one of the reasons it got out of hand was Trump truthing. Sydney Sweeney, a registered Republican, has the hottest ad because he doesn't have any other word for things other than hot. He keeps saying America. It is like he's so hot right now. It is literally like he's behaving like a character out of Zoolander.